What is going on, everybody? Non here, and Magic is back, baby. Move over Pokemon, Origins, Riftbound, One Piece, any other game you want to think of. Magic is back, and it's back with a vengeance. And it kind of goes to show that just how much pent-up demand there was for a set that looks like Magic after Avatar, which I guess was okay. Spider-Man, which I like, but the world shit on. Now we have Lorwyn, which is basically Throne of Eldraine, and Bloomborough had a love child, but some of it's a little messed up. But we're starting to get spoilers, and the spoilers are pretty exciting. And remember, I believe there's shocklands and there's special shocklands in here. The double-sided ones, the light and the dark, not that kind of double-sided. Yeah, things are zooming. So I just want to talk through this real quick. So everybody seems to have pulled their collector boxes off the market. The big sellers aren't here anymore. We have gone straight up to $469, which is absolutely insane. Now, do I think it's going to hold here? Probably not. But what's interesting is now that the price is significant, because remember, the new MSRP for Lorwyn collector boxes is $323. It was $299. They raised their prices again because, as you guys saw in my Breaking Hasbro series, if the 4 of you guys who saw it and paid attention watched it, the only way that they can increase revenue is to create more product or raise prices. They can't sell more because they've already tested the fences on what the total market looks like. And the market for TCGs is growing and slogging around at probably 3 or 4% a year. I'm sure last year was an outsized growth year, but there's only so much you can do. So that is really interesting. Play boxes. These things were as low as 125. They're now zooming. They're going to be 135 here. Let me give you guys a quick piece of information for Lorwyn. So as we compare the print run of Lorwyn to Edge Fraternities, there is about, let's see, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this and not, there's about 15% more product of Lorwyn for play boosters than there were for Edge of Eternities. Now, for Edge of Eternities, there was a couple percent less Avatar, and then about 6 to 8% less Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, again, a lot of this went to big box stores, Micropenis, drawing a blank here, Amazon. So we don't know. Just because the product goes to distribution doesn't mean that's all of it. In fact, I would wager a guess that the percentage of product going to distribution is declining at a pretty rapid pace because obviously, the other way you can grow sales is to find other revenue channels for the product. But what's interesting, and I'll just touch on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for a second. And by the way, the very, very worst case in my mind for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is it ends up being Innistrad Remastered. So the entire world has crapped all over this thing. It is a 0 out of 10. Gonna kill Magic. Take your firstborn. Take your left testicle. It is not going to be that bad. They've had plenty of time to adjust if they decide to adjust. But the number of play boxes is about 20% less than what we saw for Edge of Eternities, Avatar, and about 10% less than Spider-Man in the initial allocation. For those of you who remember the good old days before the set came out, Spider-Man play was allocated to high hell. Most people were getting like 15 to 20% of what they got from Final Fantasy because a lot of those products were held for Amazon and direct-to-consumer, as we later found out. But that being said, Lurwin eclipsed play boosters. I think you're going to perform extremely, extremely well. This is the first real Magic set since Edge. We saw how Edge performed. Edge performed extremely well. Yes, there's some more, but I think there's a lot more appeal to the general Magic audience than what Edge of Eternities had. So I could see this very easily. It's going to dip down, do what most sets do, but I could see these boxes being 145, 150, worst case 135, 140. A couple weeks after release. And what's interesting is the folks with Turtles being in between this and Strixhaven, in the best case scenario, if you want Lorwyn to zoom, you have a 4-month window, 3-month window, which is completely unheard of for this product to cycle through and for people to buy and rip the product, etc. Before you get to Strixhaven, which I'm not a huge fan of. We'll see if that changes as we get closer to the set. And then you have Turtles, which is a small set, and that comes out in March. So the stars are aligning for this set to finally break the curse of the January set, or I should say the first set of the year, which, following Aether Drift and Karloff, it would be a breath of fresh air for most of us who like the product and sell the product. So moving on, the only other thing I want to mention here, the theme decks, we'll see what the list of those of the cards in the set are. Excuse me, and what the EV looks like. But there aren't a lot of those. I mean, I think I only get 11 of those total across all my distributors. That's like 1 per 100 boxes. So not a lot of them. And the other thing that's interesting is the draft night. I only got about 70 of those. So I got one of those per every, let's see, try to do the math here. 1 per every 5 collector box, which is was really, really interesting because I wouldn't expect it to be that rare. And again, they could be holding these back for big box stores. They could be holding them back for Micropenis or for Amazon. Too early to tell. But this is why I am super, super excited. Lurwin Eclipse Commander decks. The deck lists were leaked today. I don't know if they were intended to. I thought they weren't supposed to until Friday. But the expected value of these cards is absolutely crazy. It's insane. So keep in mind, there's only 2 decks, and your display has 2 of each deck. If we go to MTG Goldfish now, there are like 12 cards that are unique that haven't been priced. But Dance of Elements is priced at $129. And this isn't perfect, but it doesn't matter because when you see the magnitude, you're going to be like, oh my God. $129 here. And some of these are going to get smashed. I mean, Cream of the Crop, I don't even know what that is. Eventide, Morningtide, something like that. A lot of these haven't been reprinted in forever. Timeless Lotus, I don't even remember what that card is. But for Commander, should be fine. A little expensive, but whatever. But you got 127 and you have 177 with Blight Curse here. And again, some of these cards, they're going to get hit in value. But if we look at the 2 sets here, so it's so you're basically $310 of value. And there's 2 copies of each in a display. So $620 of value before this releases. And the displays are selling for $160. Now, I'm actually wrong. It's $150. Now, what's interesting is the displays themselves aren't selling very well, but the sets of 2 are. The sets of 2 are up to $75. Now you look at 827 of these sold today because the EV is through the roof. So if we're at $620 and the distro price of Commander decks is the display of 4 is now $125. It used to be like $110. Obviously, they raised pricing because they can. So it's effectively $32. Just call it $32. $31.25. $31.25 per deck. If each deck is worth $150, the amount of price compression that can be had in this market before these things go negative EV, I mean, the value of these could get haircut by 80%, and you still have a valid opportunity to break these. This is absolutely batshit crazy. And when Final Fantasy came out, because I actually ran a test on this with a buddy of mine in Discord, The expected value on those was like $400. And yeah, as we got closer and closer to release, it came down to like $250. But we're like $400. Oh my God, because the cost of those was like $165 from distro. This is 50% more, and the cost is 25% less. Now, there's no Commander sample pack in here, obviously, but this is super, super exciting to see what happens with this. We're going to be listing a ton of singles on this. I mean, why would you sell the decks for $40 each if they're worth 3 times that? It doesn't make any sense. So speaking of 3 times that, and I would imagine that these things are going to get traded out. There are a lot of Commander decks. I did get a lot of them, a lot more than normal. And I think part of that is because my order is relatively large for my reps. So I think ultimately everybody gets their product, and then they come back around, and then they'll start to backfill some of the rest of the stuff that I have open. So I did get a large number of these in addition in the second wave. But I couldn't be happier with how this is looking right now. Speaking of couldn't be happier, Lost Caverns of Ixalan. We talked about this in the Breaker special last week. We are not very many of these away from $190 again. You're talking 7, 9, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 until we're at $190. These were $111 last week. I bought 6 of them last week from one of my distributors, the last distributor that had them. That was their limit. These are going to go back to $250 extremely fast. And again, let's look at the graph. And if you go back here, there was a print in December where this happened. You get all the way up here to 222, and then you spike back down. And here you're starting to move. Now, this is only showing 140. We're already up at 160. We're already up here. And it seems like the entire world of these items is accelerating. So I don't know if the demand of singles is through the roof, but all of a sudden Magic is super, super hot and super, super on fire. And it just seems like the let's call it the resurrection cycle of these items that get printed into the ground. It's accelerating. And you go back here, there's what 113 of those listed. Now let's look at the Velociraptor, which is the set everybody wants. 207 sold in the last 30 days, 225 in the market. In 2 months, these things are going to be gone. They're going to be pushing $100 again. Let's see. Is it still best selling? Yeah, it's best selling. So yeah, these are absolute nutty. So taking a look at the next two, and one of the things we're working on with the expected value tracker, the link will be below, that we're running is we're starting to run the total supply of items and the number of sales, and starting to calculate the average number of days before the supply runs out. Now, that in and of itself doesn't mean anything, but that coupled with the information that we know about when distro's running out, when distro's running dry, it helps you narrow down the amount of time that you have to buy the item and then watch it zoom. So it effectively starts to reduce the amount of hold time that you need in these products. So for example, you buy Bloomborough, say you get it on sale for $105 when everybody and their brother has it. Well, you're sitting on that for 3 months while distro still has it, or you could be doing other things with it, with that cash. What we want to look at here is once distro starts to run out, and there's warehouses that start to run out, at that point, we're probably sub 2, 3, 4 weeks before it becomes an issue, because it's like a cup tipping over, slow. And then once everybody starts to see it, it disappearing, everybody tries to hoard it, and then it goes away immediately. But Bloomborough, again, perfect example. When we get to February, March, and some distributors are out of it, some distributors still have a good amount. When we get to February and March and it starts to dry up, you're going to see the amount listed versus the amount selling. And again, this is aggregate between the displays, the most popular deck, the most popular cards in the deck, because obviously you can only get them from one place here. So if, a card in, Sultai Arisen sells 1,000 copies a month, the deck itself is selling 200 copies a month. Well, there's obviously 1,000 copies a month at some point being broken down or having had broken down in the past. But that's demand that pushes into the future because that run rate should be somewhere around there unless something materially changes in the meta. But effectively, what we're trying to pinpoint is, okay, well, this is kind of the inflection point where it's time to buy your product because it's going to start moving and accelerating up relatively quickly, as so will the expected value as the supply of cards comes down. And this is really the time to start to get in and start to build your position. And we saw, again, Tarkir, same thing, 117 listed on the market. This is sold out almost everywhere. Now, Magazine Exchange has some of it, but they tend to hold some back just to make sure the stores have access to it. Nobody else has this. And I called around to see. There's 9 of these until we're at 180. And then next thing you know, you're at 200. And sold 148 copies, sold 120% of what's listed on the market in the last 30 days. These are going to go absolutely insane. And this is supply that I didn't see this in 2025, but I also don't think people are becoming more and more educated on these commander decks and what happens next. So here's the biggie. And this is the $50,000 one here. Final Fantasy play. Been dead money forever, right? Forge and Fire still selling it for $125 a box. Go buy them because everybody in distro is almost sold out. PhD has them in a couple warehouses. Magazine Exchange has some. GTS, Alliance, Southern, they're all sold out. You might find a couple cases here or there, but everything's gone in the last month. Yeah, you're basically selling through twice what's listed here. By Valentine's Day, and I have a friendly bet with one of the guys in Discord, these boxes are going to be pushing $200 again. Now, I do think we're going to see another reprint Q2 because they're going to need the revenue in Q2. They're going to want to pump that shit out of Q2 with reprint product. But it is time to buy Final Fantasy because this is the inflection point where it's going to start to zoom. And it's just the way the market works. So anyway, guys, keep an eye on this stuff. I'm going to continue to put out content as it relates to some of the opportunities with buying stuff that's starting to dry up and also looking at some product that has positive EV to bring. So anyway, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a good night.